Good morning, everyone. Carrie and Steve here on December, what's the date?
December 7th.
December 7th. Already I don't even know what day it is.
Wake up, Carrie.
I know. This is a fun time of year because we're starting to plan and get ready for 2016. And I'm hoping we can take a little journey this morning to prepare you mentally for what's ahead. Steve, you like this part, 2016 planning?
Sure. Love it.
Okay, so who's driving the bus? Is it Steve?
I am.
Okay. So when we look at 2016, before we even start on 2016, we've got to critique 2015 and take ourselves out to lunch, spend a little quiet time, and let's do the next slide, which will critique these following items. So when we look at, we want to critique our people, which we'll go into more detail shortly on that. We want to critique our systems, the services, the hours of the salon, our current pricing, occupancy, scheduled, and actual. And we're going to do more, but these are the mental ones that we want to talk about. So let's go through these one at a time. Steve, you want to start with the people side?
So the people side can first of all be in general. Do you have enough people for what you want to do and become in 2016? Are there people you're going to need to hire? Are there people that are going to need to
be replaced?
That you're going to need to train up to the level that you need? And then, as Terry said, people that you want to replace. And remember
also,
that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
What you also want to take a look at and critique them when you look at them. Of course, we want to critique them based on productivity, which I said we're going to go into more specifics on the people later. But you want to have a private time with yourself on their skill set, their technical skill set, their service skill set, their dialogue skill set, their chair-side manner, everything that you think about them, and do they complement your vision of your business? Are these people, remember, you have a vision for your business. Now you've got to find the right people that complement that vision. And sometimes they could have their own perception of the vision of your business, which then doesn't complement their actions, their dialogue, their conversation, isn't in support and in line with what you want to do and what you want to become. And it's more about them than about the we. And so when we talk about the people, it's definitely something that is really a difficult conversation because so many times you have a personal love affair with them. And because you've celebrated their weddings, you've celebrated their children, you've celebrated them purchasing a new home or a new vehicle, and you've also are celebrating the fact that they've become more financially with you than they've ever been in their life. Then all of a sudden you have to say, oh my goodness, I don't know if we align anymore. And how do you get the emotion out of that? And 9 times out of 10, you can't remove it, and it's difficult. When you create your people list, start off with the people that you know are definitely a strength that complement you, and put them in order. And usually the top one's easy, and the bottom one's easy, and the middle ones are the ones you're going to struggle with the order with. And you have to say, okay, what do I need to do with the middles and the bottoms to get them where they need to be so they really can grow in my business, because that's a promise and a commitment we make as a leader.
Absolutely. And you know, the thing that I want to caution you on is that this is a time to kind of, at least mentally, stop the business and take a look at it. So much of the year just unfolds, and as leaders we get busy, and the guest gets demanding, and we're trying to just make sure that we deliver on our promise. But this is a time to say, wait a second, let's look and see, do I have the right people? Are they in the right positions? And do they know what's expected of them? So I think those are things. And then finally, is there enough evidence to prove what you think about the people as you go through? And I don't mean evidence as in you know, you have to prove it to anybody but yourself. Is there evidence of the way they service a guest? Is there evidence of the way that they the way that they show up on a daily basis? Is there evidence that the way that that they keep themselves current with their techniques and with their dialogue and all the things that Terry mentioned? And so we want to be sure that that's in place. And then it also sets a standard for anyone new that we're bringing into the business.
So now if we go into and more specifics later on, this is your quiet time with yourself. What systems are in place right now? What are you still struggling with? As far as your software, what percentage is being utilized? What percentage is not? Are you the experts yet? What things do you want your systems to do that they're currently not doing? And what could be better? What could we put in place, systems that will allow us to serve our guests and serve our team with more ease and direct them more easily? I mean, can you imagine? Seriously, I think back to the biggest systems that, if you want to point to things in the world, one of the biggest systems that was put in place was traffic lights and stop signs. I mean, if we didn't have those, what would our roads look like? And they'd be all chaos. And sometimes we have to have traffic lights in our business, whether it's green, let's go, full blast, stop, hey, we need to call timeout, we've got some problems, hey, we're on caution right now, this guest isn't happy. We need to know when we need to be able to look at and monitor the things in our business that makes us look a little sloppy or unsure, and put a system in that will complement the efforts. And I use that word complement because we all know that all of you on the phone as business owners have a vision for your business. And it's beautiful and it's perfect in your mind. But sometimes how we execute that vision is where we get sloppy. And it could be where the computer is at the front desk. It could be where people stand. It could be where take-home is positioned. It could be how we bring a guest check up, a service ticket that travels with the customer. It could be our beverage service. All those are the systems that we have in place in order to serve. But when do we look out of whack? When does it look like no one knows what's going on and everyone looks like deer in headlights? That's when you want to think about, when is it not easy to do business with us? And that's from a system standpoint. That's when you have to look at it and say, okay, let's work from the customer, as Steve always says, and work backwards to the staff. And what systems need to be improved on? There are systems that we give recommendations for oftentimes, and one of them is using Demand Force. Another one is using ZZOR, which Steve probably will go into later on. But these are systems that will allow you to lead and direct and serve better and with more ease and accuracy. So what systems look sloppy right now? And sometimes a system could be as simple as, what's the price of something? I was with a salon this week, and I had two people working in the salon and sitting with me, the manager and the owner, and I started asking about pricing. And the two of them weren't in sync on pricing. If the manager and the owner aren't in sync, take that down another level to the hairdressers, whether they're brand new or established in the salon, and then take that down to the front desk. And can you see how that one system of not being absolutely clear and concise on our pricing could make us look sloppy? That's a systems problem right there. And that's a great example of one. And that's just one that happened this week. Steve, can you add anything to this, even what you witnessed in the school with traffic?
Well, I think, I'm trying to think of one in the school I was going to go. I think that most definitely as we're starting to goal set traffic for our school, for just one location, for example, we're certainly looking at some raw numbers at number of people that came in and typically what our franchisor is asking of us to increase. That's all well and good, but until we find out how many, what's the number of service providers that made up that traffic, and what's the number of service providers that I have now? Sometimes we set goals that we don't have people to perform. and that's where taking this, this gut check, this system is, we've got X amount of traffic currently that was provided by this, which means X amount of traffic per service provider, which breaks down into 12 months and 4 weeks, and etc. And you come out to what's the service provider traffic per week and per month to be able to come up with that. And the system doesn't change unless something dramatically changes about for example, if there was some new wonder product that processed way different than what color does, that would cause us to change the system. But by and large, we have the same timing of things, so we can look year to year, and so it's getting a good handle on where we at right now. What did it take to provide that? And as Terry said, sometimes it's your technical systems like a Millennium or like a Salon Biz or who knows the various Mind Body and whatnot software programs that are out there. And sometimes it's a Zizor or a Demand Force. Without a doubt, they've assisted. But those are systems that we're buying from a company. Those should complement, as Terry said, but also augment and speed up the systems that you have in your business right now. And what we found more times than not is that those systems get away from us because of technology. In other words, you probably had a system for numbering your inventory items when you first set up your computer. And then as items got added over the years, all of a sudden the continuity that we had goes sideways. And so we're never really able to compare anything other than total dollar. So what is our system for numbering new items? What's our system for grouping inventory items?
And do they make sense?
Right. Does it still fit?
And does it still apply?
What do we need to change? Same thing when it comes to those of you that we worked with that have our systems for compensation and for measuring performance. Those are things that the acceptable standard certainly should be looked at least on an annual basis. I don't mean at least. They should be looked at on an annual basis. Once a year we should sit down and say, does this still fit? How is it? What does performance tell me?
So those are just a couple of examples, and I'm sure if we're going to more, I want to think of one more really quick. I mean, when we look at our systems, I always think about systems in this way. What questions can I not answer about my business easily? That means a system isn't being utilized or a system needs to be created. For example, how many new guests came in my salon last year? Okay, so let's say there's 300 for the whole year. Of those 300, how many were built by the salon's reputation and individuals? And if you can't get that easily, that's a system you need to put in place in your business because you couldn't answer the question. And I was always taught by Norman Brinker years ago when I worked for Pillsbury, something he would say to the directors that would get back to us as trainers is, if there's questions to your business you can't answer, you're losing money. And that's always stuck with me for years and years because it needs to say something and it needs to make sense. And it all should be able to be easily identified at a glance. Not, well, that number's not right because this is in there and that's not in there and that could be in there, because that throws people's conversations off. So that's just a couple of examples of systems and the accuracy of the system. All right, and we can go on and on. As far as your services in 2015, were you happy with them? Is the mix good? Are your customers asking for more that you critique the items in 2015, think, you know what, I need some new things in 2016, or I need to delete some things. Our offerings were too wide, and some of our offerings were never even enjoyed. And is that a staff issue that they weren't enjoyed, or is it just a service that's not necessary? And then you look at your hours, you critique those. How are they working for us? Do they still make sense? Do they still support prime time? Do they still support when the traffic is there? What else can we do? Remember, time is the only thing that exactly the same for everyone. It's 5 o'clock for me. It's also 5 o'clock for you. So when we look at the hours of our business, make sure they're good for the customer, not just good for the team. As far as pricing, where are we at on pricing? Does anything need to be evaluated? And one of the things I'll tell you that Steve and I are seeing, it's a system and it's a pricing issue, is add-ons are getting a little sloppy in businesses. The color add-on, length of hair add-on, thickness of hair add-on, extra time add-on. But is this consistent across the board? So if I sit in your chair and I go to someone else, we're absolutely on the same page. I mean, can you imagine going to a restaurant and saying, I want extra on my baked potato, and they say, no, there's no charge for that. I go to another person, they say, yes, we're supposed to charge 25 cents for every single thing. Another person says 50 cents. All of a sudden, we start looking kind of sloppy, and we don't mean to. It's maybe the system was updated and no one told that one person, and they're still talking about things that are 6 years old. We did that at one time. So that's a system and a pricing issue. But you need to look at your add-ons very, very closely. And it's something we look at PSC too, because add-on sometimes is a catch-all. Steve, speak to that, because I know it drives you nuts sometimes.
Well, one thing is for certain. Your service desk is face-to-face with the guest when the money is spent. And if our system isn't correct, they will find a way to
get them out of there quickly.
To cash that guest out without the guest or themselves being uncomfortable. And we've seen things in the past, like a living social, or God forbid a Groupon, or things like that that are done, and the process hasn't been designed. We put in additional services, and the process isn't designed so that it's left to, how do I feel right now? What's the quickest way? What's the shortcut that I can use to get that guest out of here? And you know, some people, when it comes to an add-on, will just increase the service price. Other people have an additional charge that gets put in there that's a line item as another service that says hair 10 to 15 inches or something, and then there's an add-on that goes to haircut or to what have you, so that they can track how many people actually receive that add-on. If we're just adding to a price, that's a problem. And even in our schools, one of the things that I've got absolutely locked down is that no one can alter up or down a price. They cannot increase or decrease the service price, period. It's done through an additional service that has to be added to it. Because as soon as, I honestly believe that most salons would be quite a bit more profitable, and some go from negative and losing money to making money based on if they just charged for the services that were being done in their salons right now. There's way too much discounting that's being done,
That's right.
And discounting is done by way of, oh, I just, you know what, it wasn't a full haircut, I just did a little trim. Can we just charge X? And then the service desk, all it takes is one stylist and one service desk person to be in cahoots to make a whole bunch of things happen inside your system that you don't want. And so this is a time to take a look at how we price, the way we list our services, and how we do that. Is it simple? Is it fast? And does it capture data that I want to capture? And so, for example, when we're talking about our services, this is something that came up, and I didn't have a chance to jump in. But when it comes to services, for every service you have, we should also know a frequency of visit for that service. So, for example, you might have a men's haircut in your system, and the frequency of visit is every 2 to 3 weeks. You might have a women's haircut, and the frequency of visit is every 5 weeks. And you've got a color retouch, that the frequency of visit is X, and so on and so forth. You go through every single service and come up with how often should they be in this salon being serviced. And then we begin to measure over time. We measure, are they living up to that frequency of visit? Because if they're not, It means that our service providers are leaving something on the table. We as a business are leaving something on the table.
And be careful, or there's too many guests in there, in that client base for that guest to be serviced. And I'm a good example of that. I get haircuts. I get color touch-ups 18 times a year, every 3 weeks. That's a lot. You'd want me in your salon. But is there room for me in your salon? Because if there's too many guests allocated to one service provider, I can't get in that chair every 3 weeks. And color is something I can't negotiate off of. I have to be in the salon. And I get haircuts every 6 weeks on that off week of the 3. So is there room for me? That old conversation about she is scheduled this many weeks out, I always venture to say, be careful, because that means that there could be too many guests allocated. And this is why you have to get in a quiet place and think about all of these items when you're critiquing your business to plan for the future, because you know what you didn't like. If you're really true with yourself and you look in the mirror, you can absolutely know what you didn't like about your business and what was uncomfortable for you. Okay, so occupancy, scheduled, and actual. We're actually going to go to the next slide, Steve, because this gives us a better viewing of that. When we look at occupancy, we're going to look at salon hours per week that you're open, and in our next slide we're going to give the examples of this, but hold on, times the number of chairs in your salon, and those are the possible salon hair hours you've got available for customers every single week. And then you want to find out how many hours is the staff scheduled in their combined schedules of that. So go to the next slide, and we want to see, for example, in this one, 40 hours per week times 4 chairs is we have 160 possible hair hours every single week. So you need to put in your math and find out what yours is. Then you add up all of your staff schedules. And maybe you have an empty chair. I've only
got 2 people working.
I know.
Why do I pick 4 chairs?
Because you have an opportunity. If you had 2 more people working, you have 160 hours. It's not the business's occupancy's fault that you haven't hired 2 more people. Here's your opportunities. So now we have 80 hours staff scheduled of 160. So we were only scheduling 80 people, 80 hours, and we start the week every week 50% scheduled, 50% empty. And that slash mark means divided by. Then we look at 40 hours is when we actually had guests in there, 40 hours of the 160 possible, and now we're at 25% and 75% empty. Now, this right here tells you and should scream at you what you need to accomplish as a boss for 2016. This is what is. What could be is 160 hours a week. Right now we're at 25%, and our business doesn't look good. And this all could be based on lack of energy. It could be the product that's going out. There's no time to train. It could be that I don't have time to hire because I myself am working 50 hours behind the chair a week of those 80 hours. There's a whole lot of things, and when you get frustrated, there's 2 things that usually happen to an owner. They either do more hair, or they kind of hide. And hiding from your business is probably the worst thing you can do, because people need leadership. They don't need you to hide. And looking at 25% and pulling this and not being able to hire and recruit at the schools and so on and so forth, I can see hiding as a way to survive, but actually the opposite is going to take place. And you've got to get your mojo back and figure out, how am I going to fill these hours? Because to the community, my business looks empty, and it's not a hip place to go. Even if we do great hair, it doesn't look like it, sound like it, act like it. And when it acts like a duck and looks like a duck, it's a duck, right? So sometimes that's what our businesses can look like if it doesn't have our leadership and our focus. Let's go to the next slide. So when we look at the SWOT now of what we need to do based on SWOT analysis is something that a fun thing. I'm going to give you the format, and you can do this overall salon, or you can do this per individual employee, a SWOT. And a SWOT is great because it's a way to complement and almost entice what is and what can be. Let's go to the next one. This is an example of a salon SWOT that could be done. And the strength in this business that we're looking at is that the owner's a strength. They have a great image. They do great hair. They're carrying 50% of the volume of the salon. But the owner can't do it themselves. The weaknesses of this business is there's not enough guests, there's not enough staff, not enough occupancy, there's too much discounting, and there's weak hairdressers by and large because the owner is behind the chair so much trying to account for every weakness that's in the business, and that's just too difficult and too big of a task for her to accomplish. The opportunities, of course, are building traffic. We need new traffic because of creating excitement. New traffic will follow. We need to be full price for our services. We need to get paid for our add-on services. Our threats in here is there's no time to train, no time to dream big, no time to implement. And how many people could have those same threats? It also could be losing another staff member. It could be one of my staff right now, let's say, is trying to start a family, and that's going to affect her productivity. You have to be able to list your threats, not only overall, but per employee. And many times as people grow their depth with us as an employee, they also want to cut their hours with us at the same time. We grow them, they create depth and talent, and then they want to lessen their hours, which is such a frustration. And because of their time with our business, we want to quickly say yes, but is that the best decision for us to give them their first request? You can always counter based on what the business needs. And you could tie it to, yeah, I could allow you to work less, but you got to help me fill those hours and those chairs. Steve, what do you want to say to the SWOT?
Well, it generally is, I find the SWOT difficult to go from opportunities and threats. The whole weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Weaknesses are somewhat easy. I like what you've got listed here, and I think it probably fits for a lot of salons. I guess opportunities, when you talk about traffic and new traffic, just, yeah, where's it going to come from? And remember that a lot of that we're looking at growing people so that 50% of the new traffic comes in by request for new people as fast as possible. And then what's our marketing plan? So when you look at this opportunity, traffic and new traffic, and you go over to threats, absolutely no time to implement. You may have seen a great or heard about a great program on social media. Maybe you went to a Vivian McKinder class and she said, take a picture of your guest before they leave and send it to them. And then they post it. They post it on their site, and it winds up giving credit to you as well. So now you're exposed to all of their friends. And that may be a great idea, but if we don't get an opportunity, if there's no time to implement anything, that's something I think that plagues Terry and I. We're not short on ideas. We're short on the time to get it implemented. And then you wind up with a notebook full of things from a seminar that you went to, and how much of it actually came to life. So
well, and what's that great line you always say? It doesn't matter who had the idea.
Yeah, this came from going around to at Midwest Show. People would come up and they'd say, "Hey, did you see this or did you see that?" And I'd say, "Sure," and they said, "Well, I had that idea 15 years ago, and now look, it's here." And I always think, okay, it really doesn't matter whose idea it is. It matters who brings that idea to market. The person that brings it to market gets paid. And so we've had a lot of...
Gets the credit.
Yeah, and gets the credit for it. And so if we're going to have those ideas, we've got to find a way to, we've got to have time to implement. We've got to have time to try and fail and tweak it and fix it and come out with it in our way. So I think that we're always going to have that threat of no time to implement because we get busy. You know what? We're all busy people, and that's something we're going to have to constantly fight.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good morning, Monday. So anyway, when we look at the threats, no time to train, what are you going to do to create time? No time to dream big, no time to implement. You might have your threats being that your staff battles you anytime you want to come in with a new idea or bring them together even to educate, and your threats might be lack of team support. That their conversation isn't heck yes, it's heck no. And that could be a threat, and you don't feel like, in anything, if you're going to get the same answer all the time, you just stop talking. But in a leader's case, you can't do that. You can't do that. All right, let's go to the next one. This is when we get into 2015 stats, and as we start to write our goals for PSC for 2016, we have to look at everything that happened in 2015. So distribution, we look at our productivity per month, and salons get their productivity per 52 weeks. So you want to take 52 weeks and list down all the traffic that you had for those 52 weeks. And I forgot to list one. You should use the man hours that were used, but we can go into that later. We want to list traffic. So let's say we had 100 traffic, 120, 100, 75, 95, 115, but we add it all up. And you're going to say, why did we only do 75 that week? And who was on vacation? And what happened that affected our productivity that week? Then you get a total at the end. And let's say that total at the end is 15,000 guests that you're going to serve. Now, did you lose any staff? Are you going to be bringing staff on? Have you lost productivity hours? Are people going to be bringing productivity hours on? You now have to project your traffic per 52 weeks. And you can have your staff help you with this because they should project out their traffic for 52 weeks too, and then you add them all up together. Then you look at your service dollars for those same 52 weeks. So this would be the second column. And your take-home dollars. And now you're going to project those out for the entire year. Now, did you have a price increase that's going to affect your service dollars for 2016 so you could bring those up? Is there going to be any price increases where people moved up a level? So you're going to see increased productivity from them in 2016, but you've got to write down everything you did and look at it at a glance. So you're looking at 4 or 5 columns: traffic for 52 weeks, service dollars, take-home dollars, your rescheduling rate, what new guests came in per week, and when did the new talent come in. So like let's say you're looking at week 16, Mary Beth started on the floor. Week 27, such and such went on maternity leave, such and such back. So you should be able to attach staff comments, new team and talent staff comments on these line items so you can see what happened and what affected you in 2015. Now we start to project 2016. Next slide. And the same thing, it's exactly the same information, but now it's what's my traffic I'm projecting, what service dollars am I projecting to take home, the rescheduling rate, how many new guests, new team talent, when are they coming in? When are they coming in, and what kind of productivity are you expecting from them, and what typically happens? So now what we do is we put our totals down, and now this becomes the number that we think about for the year. It could be 580,000, it could be 2,200,000, it could be 175,000, but also the team member now knows that this is what we're looking for from them for the whole year, broken down 52 weeks at a time. And the nice thing about this is now we have a conversation saying, I projected not just 150,000 behind the chair, but this is the traffic, the service, take home, reschedule, new guests. Sometimes their projections of what they want to do absolutely cannot be accomplished by the hours that they're working. And sometimes when you show them on paper, for you not to be at 30 hours, it's at the expense of you being able to do 150,000 behind the chair. Their hours need to make sense to support the goals that they have in place. And so many times, hairdressers want to do the same thing they did last year, working 10 hours less a week. And that's just, you can't do that working 520 hours less. Okay, so SWOT per team member. Talked about this before, but you need to write those per. And then we have to go back and say, are they in agreement of these things? And this acts as a great review for them. They also could write this themselves, and then you write it and align them next to each other. And I bet you're very close to being on the same page with the same outcome, desired outcomes, but also on the same page on their strengths and weaknesses. If not, I mean, you got a bigger problem there if you're completely out of left field. So once goals are determined for your numbers, let's go to this next one. This is an example of a timeline that you should write. And you could also add off to each one your traffic goals, your service goals, your take-home goals per that 4.3 weeks during January and March, so on and so forth. I've done this for a couple salons, and Tammy, I can see you're on the line. If you want to jump in or even say something, I'd love to hear from you. But this allows you now to say, based on everything that we wrote about 2015 and what insight we want to provide for 2016 and what goals, what do we have to put in place to make sure that's accomplished. And in this we have our e-learning, we have the in-salon education that we need to have, off-site education, a service promotion, maybe a celebration of some sort, an open house or a holiday event or a look and learn or style house night. There's also, are we launching anything? And notes could be staff add-ons, hiring, need to hire by this date. But you're giving them at a glance what we want to try to accomplish in the salon that supports our goals. You can't just write goals and not have action items to support it. This allows us to think very specifically, and maybe not everyone needs to attend everything. Maybe it's based on the goals we wrote individually. Some people are exempt from some of these classes because it doesn't apply to them. And you could have 2 in-salon classes in 1 month, this for the established team and this for the newcomers. But now you, at a glance, you have what you're trying to do. A timeline puts you in sync with your staff. Sometimes they're out of sync because they don't know what you're working on. And you could have in-salon education, support the off-site education, and create a service promotion that links all of that together so it makes sense why we're going to things, not just to improve our technique, but it supports the promotion that we're doing in-house. Steve, do you want to add to this? And Tammy, we unmuted you if you'd like to add something to this also.
I don't have any. You sent this to us, and it was great.
I can't hear you, Tam.
I'm picking up the phone. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So you sent this memo to us email-wise with you plugged in all of our in-salon education, which was awesome. So now we're able to, start in our marketing area, start planning what we're going to do as far as, are we launching this product line, and how we're going to launch this product line. And now let's take the conversation further. You know, what date are we going to launch it on? When are we going to have product knowledge on that product line? How are we going to decorate the salon with that product line? What's our display going to look like? Are we going to discount it? And then how are we going to get that information to guests? Are we going to email it? Are we going to Facebook it? You know, the answer to all of those things are, of course, yes. And Terry, you've been in the office and you've seen our big boards that we have with all the colored sticky notes. And so I'm just looking at this. You did kind of the same thing. You did different colors for the different like product launches and for the education. So we're going to probably expand on that. In other words, we've got a different sticky note color for everything we're doing. For example, green sticky notes are our events that we're planning in the salon. The blue sticky notes are our product promotions. Our pink sticky notes are service promotions. So, you know, we've just got that on our walls. It's just a big poster board, and we've marked it off into months, just like the thing that you have on your screen here right now.
And you can add more. I mean, even what Tammy just did, she added social media to this. So you put as many topics in this. This is just an example. Any topic that you think applies that could complement what you're trying to accomplish. And that's what I love about it. That's what it's amazing to me.
Great. And the thing that I hear when I hear the two of you going over this is that I got to say that this is almost never done. This is almost like an editorial calendar for a publication. If you wanted to advertise in any publication, you would get something similar to this sent out to you along with their marketing materials, enticing you to participate. This is just a way to gather information that floats around. It floats around because your consultant drops off information, or they give you a 12-month calendar, 6-month promotional calendar for product, or for individual item launches within a product line, or for a rebranding of a particular brand. All of that stuff, it needs to have a home, needs to have a place where it comes together in a logical format, so that you can do things with the various parts of your business to be able to absorb it and capitalize on it, to be able to have it make sense and make money for you.
You could put another 2 columns in here. It could be titles and dates, and whatever you need to have that organizes you. And if you look down and you see a whole month has nothing in it, well, something's wrong. I mean, if you go, well, we didn't do in-salon, we didn't do off-site, we didn't have a staff meeting, we didn't celebrate anything, well, what the heck were we doing this month? And if we're bored, our customers are too, and that's a dangerous position to be in. To celebrate, like I loved how she even said, and how are we going to merchandise, and what are we going to change, and are we going to discount during the launch of it? Those are all decisions we need to make, and sometimes those decisions are made only by an owner that's behind the chair. It never gets to the staff. It never gets to the front desk, and it fizzles out like a bad firework. Those things that are outside, they look really good when you light them, whee, and the kids run around the yard, and then when they fizzle out, everyone's disappointed. That's what happens in business all the time. And Tam, I love that you guys are using your visuals to create and keep you all on the same page. And like I said, she added social media to this too. What's going to tie it in so the whole story makes sense of the salon? Not what are we doing? I don't know. What are we doing? It's obvious. Tammy, what are you guys working on right now?
Let Elizabeth tell you. Or Noelle.
Noelle?
Hi.
Hi, sweetie. How are you? What's December looking like right now for you? Is it what you guys anticipated it to be and become?
Definitely. We've had a really good holiday season so far. We're totally on track with our gift cards, and our retail is going wonderfully. So our holiday promotions are kind of coasting because of all that we did in November to prepare for that. And then forward in January, we're going to start planning our bonus referral days, and there's lots of us going to LA, so I'm going to start working on the social media campaign for while we're at the Job and Ask School right before.
So the only thing I would say, based on your conversation, is is we need to talk about traffic. Put that in there. So I'm saying we're anticipating 2,500 guests this month, and the buyers of those 2,500 is, this is how many buyers we're expecting. And that's another way for you to quantify. Make sure we're quantifying, because sometimes in marketing it can be more fluffy than quantified. So traffic and dollars really make sense. Traffic, buyers, and who bought is a big key for you. Oh gosh, I just love working when someone's saying this is the plan. And that's what your employees want. For the others that are on the phone, they want that plan from you. And they want it to all make sense based on what we did in the past and what we can be. It's still where we are, where we going. And if we don't have a specific plan for 2016 to look different, we're going to look and be the same version of ourselves in 2015. And I'm always asking, I mean, even then when I meet with Tammy, and I don't care if we meet and see each other twice a year, I always ask, what are the hours? Because I want to know if they changed. And what are the staffing things? And what staff have you lost productivity from? I always start in the same place because that affects everything. It affects your ability to serve if the components are different. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. So now I want to go with where do we go and how often do we analyze and when do we make adjustments. So if we have these 52 weeks that we're planning and we come out of the box and we're higher already, or maybe we were conservative. My mom always says to me, I think it's the most ridiculous thing you do when you goal set, because all you are doing is guessing. I mean, she just makes me laugh when she's 83 now, and she just thinks it's funny when I tell her I'm working on goals for the next year. Is it a guessing game? Somewhat, but what we do know is how many guests, how many hours, how many staff. We do have these basic things in place. So what we have to concentrate on is making sure we're filling those hours. When we're working at an 80% more of being occupied, those businesses are busy and they're humming. Don't settle for 25%. Don't settle for it. Make sure that you are absolutely committed, that your business doesn't look like it's 25% occupied at any hour of the day. Any hour of the day. And if you have to, you phase them in the hours and you phase them out versus having everyone start at the same time, because an empty business just isn't attractive. It's not personalized service. It's lonely service. It's just not comfortable. Steve, let's talk about traffic. And one of the things that what we have to do is we know that, and even in our schools, sometimes traffic is the last thing we talk about. We talk about, because this is an artistic profession, we always want to talk about the quality of hair versus the traffic that's in the salon. And one of the things that the schools did in the last few years is put a clinic floor captain in place. And tell them how you would utilize that in a salon, and explain what the position is.
Well, first of all, going back to traffic and why traffic is so critically important. Traffic is important to any business because it's who you have available to sell your products and services to. If they're not walking through the door, if you're not having the right numbers of people walk through the door, you're fighting a battle without any winning outcome. It has to be. I think back to Howard Schultz from Starbucks, and any time that I've seen him or I've read him, an article about him or quotes from him, he is always talking about his store count, his traffic count, and the frequency that his shopper comes back. So, for example, he might say, I've got 60,000 stores, and our average client, he might say, I've got 300,000 visits per day, and of those, I've got the average Starbucks customer comes in 5 times per week, and their average spend is $17. All made up numbers, okay? But that's the example of understanding that he needs guests there. Same thing from a hotel. A hotel measures occupancy because they need guests in the rooms to be able to participate in all the various services, whether it be the mini bar, whether it be the actual food facilities, the sundry shops, the fine dining, all of those things, even right down to the bellhops and the car parks and all of those things. They go off of that count. That occupancy count is what makes such a difference. And it makes it that much of a difference in a salon too. And I'll give you an example of one way. As I said, we were reviewing numbers for one of our locations. And when I was looking at that, we had really one key area to celebrate, and that was our percentage of reschedule. We have a reschedule rate of about 60% in a school. 60% of the guests that come in are setting up their next reservation before they leave. And it's been a focus now for over a year of having that be a key focus. And one of the things that I said to our staff, to our sales leader, is that number as a percentage, is that higher because our overall guest count is lower, or is it higher because it genuinely is higher? It's easier to have a bigger percentage on a smaller number of count. So those are all things that you have to take into consideration. And if we increase, in fact, the guest count, then we also have to maintain that kind of a percentage of reschedule. So, I mean, I hope that helps. I do think that it's something that it should be looked at on a daily basis. If you think about our tracking forms, it's always who came in. That's the first thing. That's the first part of our conversation. Who came in? That's traffic. And moreover, I like to we start every day in the school with who's coming in, who's on the books right now, how many guests are coming in, what's our dollar per guest, and what's our overall dollars for the day before human intervention, before they interact with our business. See, to me, that's a fascinating number. What did they plan for before they came in? And then what are we able to, is our service at such a level, to the degree that we provide extraordinary service, the guest will trust us with more of their money. Are we providing extraordinary service? Are they, in fact, trusting us with more of their money? Are they enjoying more services? Are they enjoying take-home as a result of their interaction with our business and the people in our business? And so we start every day with that. Who's coming in, and what services are they coming in for, and what services in general are upgradable.
All right, so how to talk about the clinic floor, because I still think that in big salons we have room to do this.
The clinic floor captain is, and I'll let Terry talk to you about the expediter standpoint, but what they should know is they're the person that knows where the service experience is with every guest in every chair. They've got that in their head. They're working that entire area, whereas they're working they should have relationships, they should introduce themselves, not the obligatory manager walking by, how is everything today, but really being able to look into the mirror, look into the guest's eyes, see if they're enjoying their time, see the person that wants to make contact with somebody else. In the school business, that's a big deal because we can have people that aren't necessarily pleased in the chair. In the salon business, it's really just a way of ingratiating yourself and your salon more completely to that guest. I walked into our school on a Saturday 2 weeks ago, and all of our power people were in the back hallway offices. Their offices, they were the back hallway, and I walked in and I said, there's way too much talent back here that needs to be present on the floor. You have to get out of your offices on Saturdays.
I agree with that. Good for you.
And so when do we have to get out of our offices and be in front of the guest and make sure that they know that we appreciate them? So the other thing is they're also monitoring the quality of the product that goes out. And they're not solving it themselves. Let's say that they see a guest that isn't particularly happy, or the timing of the service didn't go particularly well, or the pricing wasn't particularly right. That's something that they filter back to the people who are training them. That's not something necessarily that they solve right on the spot, but those are training opportunities. So it's about communication. It's about being an advocate for the business and the individual stylists that they're serving. So that's really what's
well, and how do you utilize it when they're walking up? The clinic floor captain is communicating with the front desk staff. Did you talk about that?
Right. They're communicating with the front desk staff, especially if there's any add-on services that need to be added into that customer profile, that appointment profile as it's going on. There's a traveler ticket that gets marked up, but then also if we can know that back at the desk before the guest checks out, then we match the ticket against the appointment. That's
right. Okay, so now let's close on these few comments. So I was in there's a restaurant that we like to visit called R&D, and it's in Newport Beach, California. They also have, Steve, what else are they called?
Houston's.
But it's a kitchen that is behind glass, and you can see the line right from any seat in the restaurant, in the lounge area. And I'll say to Steve, watch this expediter. And it's a young lady that's expediting the traffic of the food coming up, and she is calling servers out, this table's up, we need to move here. It's someone that is pushing the business with energy. And you can feel when there's an expediter that has vested interest in the outcome. Her vested interest is, we are going to be superb tonight. That's her vested interest. She's not at every table herself. She's facilitating the energy from the guest standpoint. So, for example, this food's coming up, and she's saying, table 8, run this to table 4, table 6 should be ready, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes in our salons, we witness that no one is connecting the front operations, or the operations with the business, the operational side with the service side. The hairdressers are kind of on their own, and the only operational commitment we think we have is to check them in and check them out. But operationally is to have someone that's walking that business from an operational standpoint, looking for ways, if this was in place, we would look better here, to speed up a hairdresser, to speed up the sanitation, to make sure the atmosphere is right. Operationally is not just the check-in and check-out. It's the entire experience. And I think that's where we struggle sometimes, is we don't have someone fighting for the service during the service except for the hairdresser, and we think it's a one-on-one relationship, and that's just not the case. I hope that hit home for some people. Because even here, when you walk the business, someone could say, well, that's customer service, or that's the education, or that's the store. No, it's all of us. Operationally, it's the entire experience the guest has. So we're all responsible for everyone. Okay, let's open it up to questions. Do we have any for us today? It's 10:57, so we have 3 minutes.
Answered one question for Anthony Galigo already. Hopefully he got it. It was to everybody. So if you have Millennium, this is the path for that. You go to Data is the heading, and then it drops down a menu. You go to Service Definition. It extends another menu. Then you go to Appointment or Reservation tab, which is the second tab from the left. And what it reveals is the frequency of visit, where you put in how many weeks so they should have that service every how many weeks. So if they need to return in 4 weeks, that's great. If they need to return in 2 weeks, that's great. That's where you put it in. Then that'll be the expectation. It measures it even if there is no expectation in there. So if you pull up, if you go to that same spot, it'll tell you what your clients are currently doing. Okay, I've unmuted everyone. Does anyone have questions, comments, thoughts?
Did you just ask more questions? What? Did you just ask more questions? I heard they have to do enough. So it's live?
I can't hear Steve. If we're on speaker, it's difficult for us to hear your question. Okay, they might be just talking amongst themselves. Well, it's 10:58. If you need any additional help or clarification on anything, please don't hesitate to give us a call personally or email us, and use your consultant as a resource as well. We bid you the most fabulous Christmas and holiday and New Year's, and gosh, what a blessing this is to have all of you as part of our PSC family.
Yes, thank you so much. You honor us by your attendance and your participation, and we're just we wish you and your families the most blessed holiday. So thanks so much. We look forward to an incredible 2016.
Thank you, everyone. Good day.